I am working in psychedelics. I am not a facilitator. I am not a medical expert.
Mhm.
I don't take a large dose of psychedelics every other month,
Yeah.
right? I still take my pharmaceutical medication, which people in the psychedelic space, have opinions about.
Mhm.
But I do I watch therapists, and the best therapists always have a therapist, right?
Yeah.
People who are working in healing arts are also making sure that they're going and they're getting a massage and Reiki and meditating, and right. So I'm good on all of that. I feel
Yeah.
like my integrity when it comes to those things is good.
Mhm.
And if you're really gut checking, like, where in my life am I not operating with integrity? Then I feel like if I am trying to be a leader in this space, because I do have a voice and I know that people listen to me,
Mhm.
then the onus is on me to not bullshit others.
Welcome to Wise Squirrels, the podcast for late diagnosed adults with ADHD. I'm your host, Dave Delaney. Today is a day in the month of October, and October is ADHD Awareness Month. And if you're not already following Wise Squirrels on social media, well, you probably should be, because I am sharing, promoting a different person, a different thought leader, entrepreneur, famous person, somebody who's done great things in the world, who has ADHD, and I'm promoting them on social every day with a little post about them. So you can check us out wherever your favorite social media network is, or social network. Just look up ADHD Wise Squirrels and you'll see those. On that note, I had the great pleasure this week of attending a networking event, which was pretty small and intimate, and they had a speaker. She was great, shared a great story. I'm not here to bash her at all. That's not why I'm bringing this up. But, I'm very open about my ADHD, and mentioned this during the more social kind of chit chat session before her presentation. And her presentation was excellent. It was about her own resilience and things that held her back, things that she had to overcome. And it was a great story. And at one point, she kind of not pointed to me physically, but she actually looked at me and just kind of said some things like, you have to overcome, I forget specifically what she was saying, but basically overcoming things holding you back, like mental illness. And she continued. Now, ADHD is not a mental illness. It is a condition of our brains. Yes, it is the way we, and obviously prefacing everything I say here, I'm not a doctor and I don't pretend I'm one on the internet or anywhere else for that matter. But we know it is more of a challenge with focus and executive functioning skills. And, you're here watching or listening to this now. Oh yeah, I'm doing a video if you're listening to this. So you can check that out on YouTube, or wherever you watch videos, I guess. I don't even know where I'm going to post it yet. It will be on YouTube, but I digress. So I had to bite my tongue. And as she was continuing on with her presentation, I was thinking about how I can handle this. I knew that I had to speak with her about it, but I wasn't sure if I should do it one-on-one or whether I should tactfully mention it during the Q&A session. And I decided, since, there was maybe 13 other people in the room, they had heard her say that too. And if I didn't correct her tactfully with kindness, in front of everybody, then somebody might come away misunderstanding ADHD, or multiple people could. So I decided I would bring it up. And so during the Q&A, I made some supportive comments kind of related to the content of her presentation. Again, very happy, very supportive. And then I also added, lastly, And again, I did this very tactfully and didn't do it with any intent to make her feel, embarrassed or anything. But I did mention that I just added, and just so you know, ADHD actually isn't a mental illness. It's just a neurological type, just like you. So I did want to mention that. And she was like, thanks. And I say that because I think it's really important for us to stand up for ourselves and to correct people when they're wrong about ADHD. Not in any sort of mean way or argumentative way, but in a situation like that, it was small and intimate enough. Had there been hundreds of people, I don't know, I probably still would have, because when ADHD and misinformation or just incorrect data or whatever comes up, I want to make sure to be there and to point it out whenever I can. And so I hope you might do the same. Heck, it's ADHD Awareness Month, right? I'm excited to announce that our friends at Inflow have returned. I know some of you thought, where's Inflow? They've been sponsoring the podcast on and off for quite a number of months, and they're not here. Where were they on the last episode? Well, I am happy to report that Inflow are back as a sponsor. And of course, I have availability for sponsors to support the show. And you can find that at wisesquirrels.com, or just reach out to me and I can give you those details. But Inflow is back. And if you have not yet taken the ADHD traits quiz over at wisesquirrels.com/inflow, I really encourage you to do this. And not just because they're a paid sponsor, okay? I've done it myself multiple times. I just did it again recently when they re-engaged. And it's cool. Like it takes you through understanding yourself and the ADHD sort of presentation that you may closely align with, right? Not type, but presentation. And you go through it, and it kind of customizes itself as you're going through it to give you advice. You've got some great clips of advice, some strategies, all built into this. And of course, Inflow also has a wonderful app, and they've just introduced Quinn, which is their AI-powered ADHD coach type of service, I guess. And that's pretty neat too. So it's cool to see Inflow really wrapping themselves around new innovations, new technologies in order to improve ultimately the experience for their customers, right? And so it's free to do the assessments thing, or the quiz, so you don't have to pay anything. But if you visit wisesquirrels.com/inflow, check it out. Let me know what you think. You can always reach out and leave a comment. And I would love to hear what your thoughts are on this awesome ADHD traits quiz. And Quinn, check out Quinn. As you might know, I love helping people. I love supporting people, and I have coaching available. And I'd love you to visit wisesquirrels.com/coaching and sign up now for a free session. No strings attached. Let's have a chat, see if I can help you, give you some free advice, but also get to know you a little bit and see if my coaching might be the right thing for you. So I would love to chat with you to see if I'm a fit. Head over to wisesquirrels.com/coaching, sign up. It's free. And let's have a little chat. Today, I'm speaking with April Pride. April is a Seattle-based creative entrepreneur and harm reduction advocate with over 2 decades of experience building brands at the intersection of lifestyle, cannabis, psychedelics, and women's well-being. Recognized as a thought leader in emerging markets, April is behind category-defining brands like Vanderpop, How to Do the Pot, and SetSet. She's been celebrated by Forbes, New York Times, Vice, and The Guardian, plus earned accolades such as High Times Female 50 and Most Creative Cannabis Entrepreneur in the US. So pretty impressive. So I'm going to go ahead now and share my interview with April. We didn't just talk about things related to cannabis and psychedelics, of course. We talked a lot about entrepreneurship and owning a business and running businesses and exiting from businesses. So I've learned a lot from this conversation. We also talked about imposter syndrome, addiction, and things like that. So it's a great conversation. April's awesome. And I'm excited to share this with you.
I am April Pride, and I am a creative entrepreneur that likes to launch businesses, usually multiple at one time. And currently, I am the founder of SetSet, which is a platform, an educational platform that's women first for cannabis and psychedelics.
That's great. Yeah. And congrats too, by the way, on your exits, right? You've had 3 exits from businesses. Tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. Like I know you're from, or are you from Seattle? I know you're based in Seattle. Are you born and raised there?
No, I grew up in Virginia.
Okay.
And I went to architecture school at the University of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got my master's at Parsons. So I was very committed to being an interior designer. That's what I wanted to do. I was actually just on a call with somebody who was diagnosed in his 40s with ADHD. Yep. He's now in his 70s. And I was explaining to him that the moms that I knew, I mean, I put myself through college and my mom worked because she had to. She's a single mom. But the moms that were hanging out at the pool in the summer and also worked were interior designers. Like,
oh, no kidding.
I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then I became one, and it was shopping all day and then project management, which was a nightmare for me. I did not have an ADHD diagnosis yet. Yeah. So I had time between clients, and I launched a product. That's when my entrepreneurial path really started, because I liked owning the creative process, right? Finding overseas manufacturer, creating the website. This was 2008. Yeah, okay. 2008. Yeah. Okay. So, I wanted to do that. I didn't want clients to tell me what to create anymore. I wanted to do it myself. So I sold that company. It was a lighting accessories company. I sold it to the largest distributor of lighting accessories. And I'm like, okay, this is great, because I'm not interested in that anymore. And I want to move on. And again, now understanding how, my mind works, that all made a lot of sense.
Yeah, so, yeah. Continue,
fast forward. I started a dress company. I don't really want to talk about that. I was never going to go into fashion, really, but I found myself in this place where I was an accidental fashion designer. And a client in that business had she was the executive assistant for the CEO of a holding company here in Seattle in cannabis. And she didn't even drink. So I was really like, what is happening? And that holding company owns Tilray, which is one of the larger LPs, licensed producers in Canada. I am in Seattle, but Canada is federally legal for cannabis, so that's why they play up there. They have the licensing, 30-year licensing agreement with the Marley family. So, a very influential firm. And she said, I see all the decks and the deals that are coming through. No one's doing anything that is with the designer's eye. And I was shocked. I'm like, how is this possible? This is a new industry in our lifetime, which doesn't happen. Yeah. And it's super creative. I thought that, creatives from New York to LA would be all over this. So I took her out to dinner. I wanted to know more. And the guy that owned the restaurant, he knew both of us. He asked what we were talking about. She said, I'm trying to convince her to launch a line of luxury cannabis accessories. And he gave me my seed capital. He and his wife did. So
no way.
He offered it that night. I went the next day, and we were off to the races.
That's amazing.
One more investor, and then we put in some cash too, my ex-husband and I. And then, within 3 years, I sold it to the largest cannabis company in the world to a 28x ROI to my investors, including myself and my family. And I was like, yes, this is what I like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So it's such a great story. And it's interesting because you were diagnosed at 38. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And where was that? So you started the first company, you said in 2008, where only an ADHD or undiagnosed would start a company in 2008, right? It's like not a great time economically, but still why not? Right. I mean, they
Well,
always say like the best time to buy a house was yesterday, or plant a tree was yesterday, or whatever that line is that I totally just butchered. But anyway.
well, first of all, okay. The launch party was the night that WAMU, Washington Mutual, announced that it was going under. So
Oh
I had
God.
already been starting the company. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That had to add a little layer of stress, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So yeah. And so where along this journey did you move to Seattle then? Like, did you move to Seattle? You said you moved to Seattle to follow your architecture journey first, right?
I followed a man that I loved who's from
Okay.
here. Yeah. So 20 years ago I moved here, but I sold books door to door to put myself through college, and they'd ship kids from one coast to the other because it's so hard. They don't want you just to go crying home if it's easy. So I would go from Virginia to Washington State by chance. That was totally coincidental, every summer. And my husband was also at the University of Virginia, and I met him our last semester of school. And so all of that, I knew I wanted to live here anyway. I loved it out here. So yeah, I've been here for quite a while.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful part of the country. And I'm actually from Toronto originally. So I am Canadian now, I guess. Yeah. And certainly, yeah, the West Coast BC is incredible, and Alberta. It's interesting because I think in fact, I know because I have a presentation I do called The Root Down, which is, about ADHD. It's partly about my own story, my own journey and entrepreneurship and things. And I've delivered that for like chapters of like EO, for example, the entrepreneurs organization in Silicon Valley and San Francisco and Oakland, like this combined event, and at the Entrepreneur Center here in Nashville, where I live now. And it's astounding to me, that connection. I mean, you think like there's so many companies that were started with ADHDers, whether they were diagnosed or undiagnosed. And the name, people like brands like Virgin, of course, JetBlue, Spanx is another one.
FedEx or Kinko's.
Kinko's. Yep. Toys R Us. Not the greatest story at the end, but it's still, Toys R Us. Who doesn't love Toys R Us? And so, so there's, and then there's a lot of, in the tech community as well. I've done, a fair amount of work in the tech community and in the tech industry. And so certainly there's a lot there as well. Do you think ADHD played a role in your entrepreneurship? Like, did it, well, without putting words in your mouth, but I almost imagine like sometimes it's the impulsivity of just doing it. You get the idea, which is pretty much how this podcast started, by the way.
Sure.
Right. So yeah. How did that tie into your life early on in the career that you were doing in the startups?
Oh man. Interesting. Okay. So the conversation about starting a cannabis company happened 9 months after my diagnosis, 6 months maybe after my diagnosis. So I was for the first time on Adderall, and I felt like I could do anything, honestly, it felt like I got the information and the treatment that I needed in order to make this company work. I don't know that it would have, this was a huge opportunity that I don't know I would have been able to make happen the way that I mean, not that it was easy for me, right? I still had somebody that I'm super grateful. I relied on her so much to get a lot done. I still don't know how she's alive based on how much I was telling her to do.
Right.
But that timing was very fortuitous. And then I was not drinking. I had stopped drinking after the birth of my second son. So I would drink maybe like 3-4 times a year, right? It just felt right to me. And I would smoke weed when it was around, but I didn't have my own stash, even when I started the company. Well, that all changed, right? So then I had access to cannabis all the time. And the narrative was, well, there was no science that was saying that it was bad. right? There wasn't science that was saying it was good.
Yeah.
And I was choosing not to do the math of smoking is clearly not great for you.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I definitely developed cannabis use disorder
Mm.
because if you're a person, as I was, I chose to stop drinking for a reason,
Mhm.
and if you're a person that walks that line, which a lot of us with ADHD are because of impulse control,
Yeah.
and then there's not the information that we now have with cannabis being legal for many, many years. There's just more data points of,
Mhm.
it's out in the population writ large. There are a lot more diagnoses of cannabis use disorder. And now I also understand how our brain works and how THC was meant to interact with our CB1 receptors. And it's not at the doses of THC that's being sold in dispensaries, period.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
is, so I feel like understanding how my brain works has allowed me to be a better educator for people who are looking to cannabis to solve some of their emotional, mental, physical problems. It's just so important to make sure that they don't end up in the place where I did,
Mm.
where they could lose their privilege and what it could be helpful for. They just can't, I can't keep it in my house. I
Yeah.
just can't. That's the fix, so.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, yeah, even my wife and I, we've just recently become empty nesters, and our kids are, both at different colleges, not here. So, yeah, we finally like purged a lot of the like things with chocolate and, the terrible things that we would, snack on. I think out of sight, out of mind, just getting it out of the house is a great thing. To the point about addiction uh, or speaking from my own experiences, like growing up, I used to drink a lot, especially in my like 20s and even before I had kids, certainly. And that was probably the point where I was like, okay, gotta smarten up here. But I would drink a lot, and when I smoked cigarettes, 25 some odd years ago, I would chain smoke, and I would smoke, a pack easily, or two even, in any given city arrangement, just hitting a bar or a pub or something. And so I'm sober now, 5 years. So I quit drinking, mainly because I took 30 days off in 2020 when the world was imploding, and we had our own pressures and stress, on top of all that. But I was drinking a little too much, and I'm like, I need to cool it off. When I lived in Ireland for a few years, that's where I met my wife. And when I lived in Ireland, we used to call it like getting off the piss. So it'd be like, you coming out tonight? No, I'm off the piss tonight. Oh, okay. I'll see you, whenever. Or,
Okay.
So I told my wife, I'm going to take 30 days and just get off the piss, as they say. And I did that. And then during that time, discovered that non-alcoholic beer has gotten a lot better, like a lot better. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it's not beer. And suddenly I'm like, wait. And so, I started drinking the non-alcoholic beer. Now, it can be argued whether I was an alcoholic or not. I'm not really sure. Friends would say I was, that I grew up with. I don't know. But I only say that because if someone's an alcoholic, drinking a can of something tasty that tastes like a beer, and especially if it's 0.05%,
Yeah.
that may be not a good idea. So I don't endorse it necessarily. But for me personally, like, it didn't trigger anything. It was just a replacement. And so, and certainly as a kid too, like I would smoke pot, smoke hash, did LSD a couple times, did shrooms. So I've had some of those experiences. And it's funny too, because I was back in Toronto with a couple of my best friends that, I grew up with, and we were joking, we were laughing because now we're old. So there's that. But he was complaining that like, oh man, now late at night, you go out in Toronto and like all the streets just smell like pot. And we were talking about that, and we're like, yeah, but what would you prefer late at night? Like a bunch of people drunk rolling out of a bar, or people like high on weed? Because I don't know any high person on weed who's ever gotten into a fight, maybe over a bag of Doritos. But besides that, I can't imagine it, where like alcohol, certainly, bad things can happen.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, the other part of the addiction or the excess that I've learned in my own diagnosis now, I was diagnosed like 3 years ago now, or a couple of years ago, is that we kind of we're kind of excessive people to begin with, and generalizing, of course, and we lack dopamine. And so, we crave ways to get dopamine, and unfortunately there are good ways and bad ways. And unfortunately, a lot of us find the bad ways. What are your thoughts on that idea about the cravings? Because tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, what I told my son, who we just dropped off at college for the first time, as soon as you invite any of these substances into your life, that's the day you start managing them. Like that's been my experience. That's the experience of everybody in our family. And you can take days, weeks, months, years off the piss, right? And some people stuck with it. And, I kind of ebb and flow, but I don't, aside from cannabis, there's no excess that I have to be concerned about. Alcohol was never my drug of choice. It was just what was around.
Yeah.
And as soon as I'd stopped drinking before I got a diagnosis, but I started meditating before a diagnosis. That's super helpful for me.
Me too. Yeah.
I've always had an exercise practice. I've always been super physical, because it turns out I'm like a dog. I'm hyperactive. You got to walk me all day, so I can go to bed at night. Yeah. So I feel lucky that that's been a part of my life. There are really, really great ways to manage getting dopamine, or, getting lifted, I guess you could say, outside of substances. I didn't consume it all when I was in high school. So I was kind of a late bloomer in that way. But I think that the lack of dopamine is why I like, and fighting boredom is why cannabis really is my drug of choice. So the onus is on me to distract myself in other ways. I went to the Hoffman Institute 3 years ago, after I got divorced. And if you go to their website, it says where you go to break up with your parents. So you're like going to figure out what your patterns are that you might have inherited, which ones are yours, which ones are theirs. And so getting over cannabis was something I really wanted to do. I gave myself a year after the divorce to just, do what I needed to do.
Yeah.
Get through it. And then one of the counselors there suggested that when I get into this place of craving, to say, and he did not share this with us, but it was something that I figured out. He was an alcoholic at one time. Just say, I'm satisfied. And it's a mindfulness practice that I was actually just sharing it with a group of people yesterday. It's surprisingly effective, because you know what? You are satisfied.
Yeah.
There isn't anything else I really need or want in that moment. It's habitual, or it's a state change that I just am like, I've been feeling this way for 30 full minutes. I want to do something different now. So,
yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Continue.
That's the end of my thought.
No. And I started a meditation. I've dabbled with meditation and mindfulness throughout my life, here and there, never really taken it seriously until 2020. And at that time, again, it was sort of the pandemic, the stress of like, our house had been damaged in a storm. And so we were knocked out of our house for 3 months, and my kid's school was destroyed in a tornado. And it was just like one thing after the other, plus, a pesky little pandemic and, police violence and all the things that were going on at the time were just extremely stressful. But yeah, I hear where you're coming from. And I think, it's not all negative too. Like the thing, like one of the things that I do best and I love most, and what I'm hired to do often, is deliver presentations. I do a lot of public speaking. I was a speaker. That's what I did with Google for about 6 years too, is speaking on their behalf. and I'm also kind of a nerd or performance nerd too. Like I love, I studied improv at Second City in Toronto and love improv and comedy and performance and storytelling and all that stuff. And I realized looking at my life through this ADHD lens and learning more about myself is that, yes, I talked about the lacking of dopamine and replacing that with excessive, bad things that can hurt you. But you turn it around and I realized that when I stand on stages and I'm delivering a presentation or virtually whatever, I get this rush of dopamine from the audience who are laughing and smiling and shaking their heads. And I'm like, oh, and like I wrote a book a number of years ago called New Business Networking, which is about networking because I've run events and things over the years. And again, it's meeting people. I'm extroverted. So like I love people anyway, and I love the energy I get from people. So that also is like part of the plus of how my ADHD mind can crave dopamine and get it in better ways as well. And certainly, getting back to the entrepreneurial points, I mean, getting hyper focused on something entrepreneurial can be a wonderful thing, because you can, like, I turned Why Squirrels, the website, and and my podcast and everything else around in just days. Like I just got hyper focused and boom,
Totally.
Yeah. Did you find so I've been a solopreneur for like really 12, almost 13 years now, and making some career changes right now, kind of reassessing things or assessing things. And one thing that I've learned is that we need others. And this isn't just about ADHD, of course. I mean, we, as humans, we need other people, but certainly in entrepreneurship, you can't, I mean, you can, but most of the time, I don't think you can do it alone. Even you need people in the background, you need, or even a co-founder or what have you. Did you find that? Could you mention a woman or someone that helped you early on, and you said like you couldn't believe like she was, didn't whatever. What sort of connections or people came into your life that helped you with your businesses? I would imagine you didn't do it alone either.
Yeah. I mean, yes, there are angels everywhere, truly,
Yes.
and have been throughout my life. Well, the woman that I mentioned was my intern. She started with me at the fashion business when she was at Northwestern in college in the summers. And she stayed with me during the school year doing social media. And then she graduated a year early. And I told her, I'm going to start this cannabis company. I'm sorry. I don't even, are you 21? And it turns out she has her own bong, and yes, she was thrilled about it.
Yeah.
But, I burned out that relationship. I didn't know that I was giving her delegating too much and relying too much on her. I wasn't doing the math at all of project management. And so when I sold the company, I was really clear. By the way, she went from being an intern making $20 an hour to, selling a company. So that was the best internship ever.
Yeah.
But she also paid for it. And I did too, because that relationship doesn't exist today, and I think if she were to meet the people I'm working with today, they would be shocked at her stories, and she would be shocked that this is how I work today. So, I am so appreciative, because I learned a lot about what I can do and can't do, and how I should and shouldn't, and all that with her. And then I did have the third company I sold to my business partner. It was a podcast that I started because I had sold to Canopy Growth. I was back and forth between Seattle and Toronto for 2 years.
Oh, really? Are you from Toronto, or?
No, but I sold.
You were just there because of the, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
So great city. I love your hometown. I love it. Best, happiest accident ever.
Yeah.
Spending time there was great. I don't know how I would have spent so much time there otherwise. So I'm really grateful for it. And so I asked a woman who I went to college with to help me launch a podcast. I wanted to be able to stay home, be closer to my kids, not travel. And I found that what I've come to learn about myself is I would choose romantic partners, professional partners, people who were making up for where I felt I was lacking.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about what do you want from this? What do I want from this? Where are we aligned? It was like, what can you do well? What can I do well? Great. 1 + 1 = 3.
Right.
And I immediately said, having learned from the partnership that I just mentioned, I said, we need to get a coach. We have to work with someone. I knew I have ADHD. That means deadlines are like midnight on that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not going to have any progress to show you until that time.
Yeah.
And she was my straight man, and ultimately she couldn't do it. It was too much that she couldn't control or predict. And I was so frustrated because I felt like I had built a brand. I was doing all the creatives. I was the host of the podcast. It was my connections. I had worked in cannabis. There was all this stuff. I didn't really know what else I could do differently and there was a pandemic happening. So, what do you want to control here? Just putting out a podcast. And I really wanted the podcast was to be a channel to put products that I created through. So we had our own marketing channel because of the restrictions around marketing on platforms like Meta, right?
Yeah.
And Google. So I knew I needed to start the next thing. And she really wanted to get this thing dialed in. And that's where the ADHD came in, where I was like, there's not a path to profitability with just this. I know that. That's why I built it, because I want to be able to put the products in that we know people want. And
smart.
Anyway, I'm like, okay, why don't you buy this for me? I'm going to go start something else. And that's when I started working in psychedelics, because I was really, I'm curious about the thing that nobody's doing. And there's I want to be able to make the rules and break the rules at the same time. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you've been successful. Part of my own entrepreneurial journey often is I'm a pretty early adopter in a lot of things, and a lot of the times too early in things. And because I have ADHD, and especially before I had been diagnosed, I would just abandon them after getting bored. And so I mentioned, like I had the second parenting podcast ever in 2005. And we ran it for 3 years. Had we just stuck with that podcast, we'd be like, laughing our way to the bank every day. Yeah. And I often joke that, like, had I known 20 years ago that I had ADHD, I would have started a podcast about ADHD. And then, I'd have like Joe Rogan money or somebody, without platforming crazy people. So it's interesting, but it's also, I mean, you have to give yourself credit there too, that like it's a very clever idea and sort of workaround. A lot of times when I advise people about podcasting, for example, I think I've talked more people out of podcasting than to do a podcast, at least from a business professional standpoint. Yeah. Hobbies are different, but only because, I mean, they're a heck of a lot of work, and they're very time consuming, and oftentimes, like, if you want to have a podcast, you really have to know why you want to have the podcast. And so it's clever. I mean, it was really smart of you to think of that as kind of a workaround in being able to promote your business when the other channels wouldn't let you. Do you find that, like, are there other interests and things that you've been like excited about that you were either, not to say you were too early, because clearly it seemed like great timing, or are there things that you started and just didn't want to do anymore? I mean, you mentioned the dress company and things.
Yeah. I mean, in order to have any product company, what have you done for me lately? What's your next product? I don't want to write about what you designed 2 years ago just because you started inventory or you think it's still in vogue. And so just the need to continually produce, I'm just not, I mean, I don't care about fashion enough to get curious, right?
Yeah.
So style is a different thing, but to be a fashion designer, I have a lot of respect for people that are doing that and choose to do it. And it's not easy on any level, whether it's business, the actual design and the technical part of it. And I just felt like I was a poser. I just was not, this wasn't my plan as a child. So that had my name on it. Right. So I was walking away from that, but name is my name. So I don't know. I think the biggest compliment I would have interns, sometimes I'd have 6 interns in a summer. And the biggest compliment I ever got from one is they said, we could be working on something for the whole week and the next week. And at the end of the second week, you'd say, this isn't working. And you'd throw it away, put it in the trash, and we'd start over.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I am definitely okay with trying something else if I don't feel like it's going to work.
Yeah. And it's also interesting you mentioned with the fashion business not being really in your wheelhouse. You touched on something there around, well, without putting words in your mouth, but like self-doubt or even imposter syndrome, which are common things for folks with ADHD. Have you experienced that like elsewhere, or are you're familiar with that feeling?
Oh, I mean, I am working in psychedelics. I am not a facilitator. I am not a medical expert. I don't take a large dose of psychedelics every other month, right? Yeah. I still take my pharmaceutical medication, which people in the psychedelic space, have opinions about. But I do I watch therapists, and the best therapists always have a therapist, right?
Yeah.
People who are working in healing arts are also making sure that they're going and they're getting a massage and Reiki and meditating, and right. So I'm good on all of that. I feel like my integrity when it comes to those things is good. The other part of this, and when I did have my last very large dose of psilocybin, the word integrity was what I held on to. And if you're really gut checking, like, where in my life am I not operating with integrity? Then I feel like if I am trying to be a leader in this space, because I do have a voice and I know that people listen to me, then the onus is on me to not bullshit others, right? Like there's just too much at stake that's been there well before I came into the picture to turn this into a mockery. We have enough people that are trying to do that. So,
oh my God, I know.
Yeah. So I don't have imposter syndrome. I'm real clear on, what my contribution is in this space. It is around education and quality product, which, is tricky. And I have not been, I did create a psilocybin product. I have not been distributing it for the last 1.5 years because there just was no way for me to do it legally. And that means I can't talk freely about this if I'm also doing something that's not an integrity behind the scenes.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So are your customers typically like, is it sort of B2C as in business to consumers, or is it more B2T like therapists, or like, cause I know, and I haven't participated in any sort of guided dosing or anything. So I was more like it was more in my teen years. The last time I did any sort of hallucinogenic. So, tell me a little bit about that process for folks.
Yeah. So SetSet it started as an educational platform, and the first product we put out, educational platform for psychedelics and integration. So integration is you have a psychedelic experience or you're microdosing and you're trying to make sense of what came up during that experience, or the things that are happening throughout your day when you're microdosing that you just are starting to think about things that you're confronted with and have been for days, weeks, months, years in a different way, right? Trying to make sense of it. So the first thing we came out with was a deck of cards.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's $27 deck of cards because I was very invested. I was financially invested in a social equity license holder in cannabis. The way that the industry, didn't take care of people,
Mm.
really bothered me. And the taxes, how expensive it is to buy cannabis. There's a reason why people don't go into dispensaries and they still buy from their quote guy, right? So I looked at psychedelics and I'm like, people are charging hundreds of dollars an hour, or you got to go to a retreat that's thousands of dollars. We can grow mushrooms in a drawer for nothing. This is nuts. People need to be able to use this and use it in a way that they're getting the most out of it, and it shouldn't cost them a lot of money. So it created, with actually partners in Toronto,
Yeah.
this deck of integration cards. So this was the first integration tool. Then I partnered with a licensed therapist, and she created a microdosing protocol called MicroPsych that's based on the neurobiology of change, because we are experiencing neuroplasticity when we choose to take psychedelics. That means that throughout our lives, we have these well-worn grooves in our brain. When this trigger happens, this is how I react, right? And sometimes those reactions, they were maybe serving us when we were younger, survival. But as we get older and we're still doing the same thing, it's not working for us anymore. So you take psychedelics, you spend more time in nature. You spend time with people who make you laugh. There are lots of ways to increase your neuroplasticity, not just with psychedelics. And I encourage any of your listeners to consider what they can do that will allow for that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like snow falling in those grooves. So when you're confronted with the same trigger, you have more options. You don't just go where you've always gone. So these tools, this curriculum, is intended to help people really understand what's happening to their mind so that they can leverage these changes to enforce change into their own, or to, support change in their own life. And all of the downloads, I mean, if you join a microdosing group or you work with a coach, again, it's hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And this is an evergreen product that you download for under $100. The idea has always been to make sure everything's extremely accessible. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
And when you were asking, are we talking to consumers? Are we talking to therapists? It's for the 3 out of 4 people that are using psychedelics outside of a clinical environment, people that are doing it with their friends and family. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think often the advice I hear is to do it with a guide or with a physician or doctor or therapist or somebody who can be there with you to get you in case you're struggling. I mean, there's no guarantees in the quote unquote trip or vision or what have you that you may experience. And so, hopefully it's good. And I think a lot of times it is, but then there are bad trips as well. So having somebody with you, do you have, like, obviously making it more accessible means, and not everybody can afford to have a guide, a therapist, as you mentioned. So do you have like some instruction or part of that into like, it's almost like having the designated driver, to make sure that everybody gets home safely, kind of thing?
Yeah. It's you can call them a guide, you can call them a trip sitter, but it's somebody who's not partaking.
Yeah.
And, the number of challenging experiences is actually 1 in 5. And women are much more likely to have a challenging experience because although we don't have the medical evidence to explain this, we do know that psychedelic compounds and hormones, there's a relationship there. And so when women are in their luteal phase, when our hormones are at their most balanced, that's the optimal time for us to say yes to a psychedelic experience. If you get outside of that window, the chances of you having a more challenging experience go up. So it's that type of information that I'm trying to impart so that you can set yourself up for success. And the name SetSet comes from set as in mindset and setting, your physical surrounding. So making sure that you're dialing those things in. If you have a bad day, but if you've got a journey scheduled that night, I would highly advise you to consider doing it at a different day, because whatever your emotional state is going to be exaggerated when you add psychedelics, and that's not always good. So,
I would imagine, especially for ADHDers, because, anxiety and depression are like the most common comorbidities that come along with ADHD, among other things like, bipolar and OCD and things like that. But I mean, I know from my own experiences, certainly anxiety and depression are things that, are annoying bedfellows that come along with it. So I guess, you have to be careful there.
Yeah. And I take an SNRI, I take bupropion.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you really need to be off of your medicine for 6 weeks before you take psilocybin. Same with an SSRI. That's hard to titrate off for a lot of people. When I went to the retreat, I was off for 3 weeks. Well, I'm not a medical expert. You just need to check with your doctor. But
Always,
if you take your SSRI in the morning and you try to have a large dose experience that night, you will require a lot more of the psychedelic medicine in order to get to the place that, the people around you are in, if they're not taking a pharmaceutical. Yeah.
And that makes complete sense. Tell me about the retreat that you mentioned, because this is something I've always wanted to do and haven't done, but really, I mean, as I said, since 2020 and taking meditation much more seriously and speaking to so many experts on this podcast, Lydia Zylowska, who wrote, the book about ADHD and mindfulness. And of course, Mark Burton, who does a lot around parenting and meditation, but he's a doctor. Also, Dana Cruz, who's an incredible ADHD coach, and she also is she's trained all over the place. And then of course Joseph Goldstein, who was like a complete honor to speak to, because anybody who knows insight meditation or mindfulness meditation, he's one of 3 Americans that kind of brought it to the West. So that was incredible. But tell me a little bit about the retreats that you've done and your experiences with meditation.
Well, the retreat was a psychedelic retreat. It wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and it was in Jamaica, because Jamaica, as you were talking, I was trying to think. Jamaica, I believe it's psilocybin's decriminalized. I don't think it's legal. I think I might be wrong though. Sorry. I should know.
Yeah.
But I went with a woman who lives in Ontario, who I had met and I've worked with for years and years in cannabis. And she had been leading underground retreats for 20 years. So she invited me and I paid for my retreat. And I said, yes, Jamaica is a place that I've been fortunate enough to travel to a lot. And I love that island. I love the people, all of it. So I felt like, okay, that's a good idea to do that. And I am very intentional about when I do choose to take high doses. They say you need to be called to the medicine. I try to respect that. I might need to do it more than I actually do based on some people's, thinking. But for me, this is what's working. I mean, the idea, right, is that you have a psychedelic experience and then you don't need medicine ever again.
Right.
Really, it's not a pharmaceutical where you're just going to, hey, we're going to put you on this. We'll see.
Well, I mean, and I've, and again, also not a doctor, but I've heard from reliable sources that, without remembering where they came from now, about psychedelics and helping to quote unquote cure like PTSD and things like that. Obviously nothing cures ADHD, so it's kind of it is what it is, but it's our operating system, as I like to say. But so I find it interesting. And I was speaking to somebody about maybe trying something not that long ago, actual therapist. So we'll have to, I'll report back if that happens.
I would like to make a comment. So, I've only had low dose ketamine that's been prescribed to me, lozenges at my house. Ketamine is legal, and it's used in emergency rooms. Kids use it for children, for animals. And I could not believe the day after I had my low dose lozenges, how organized and calm I approached my work. wild. So I did some research, and we have, our brain cells have these finger-like extensions called dendrites,
Mm.
and they shrivel up, and they have they have receptors on the end, so they catch neurotransmitters,
Mm.
and they're part of our prefrontal cortex. So cortisol, which people with ADHD, I'm sure, produce more cortisol, can make these dendrites atrophy. And so ketamine is works on the GABA system, I think I'm saying this, and increases BDNF. And so those dendrites come back alive, and then you have more opportunity for neurotransmitters to connect with the receptors they were intended to. There is something to this for people with ADHD, and there are psychedelic pharmaceutical companies that are researching this. So ADHD is something that I think that people with a diagnosis will benefit from research that's happening in psychedelics right now.
Yeah.
I have found psychedelics to help me with is to come to peace with the 38 years that I didn't have a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And the behavior that came along with that, the self-doubt that came along with that, the loss of potential.
Yeah.
You know, there's just a lot, there's grief and mourning in a life that you now understand played out in a super specific way, and you had nothing to do with it. And you felt like you were at the center of all the things going right and wrong the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That has been when anyone with ADHD wants to talk to me about psychedelics, it's really, you just need to have a better relationship with yourself because of the years and years of not understanding who you were, really, and I think psychedelics has helped me with that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like something I often say and advice I often give as it pertains to being diagnosed later is like that it can be a dangerous place to look back at your past too much, especially in a negative light. All the, I could have's and should have's and, what you might have missed and all these things. Obviously, and it's hard because as an entrepreneur, you have to look at the past as far as like fiscally and planning and all these things. I mean, you have to understand what worked and what didn't work. And then you do have to plan for the future. And the line is always that, like, if you think too much of the past, that can lead to depression. And if you think too much of the future, it can lead to anxiety. And this gets into mindfulness and meditation and the idea of being present in the moment and just trying to focus on on the moment and the breath. And by doing that, that can help you kind of slow down. I think in my experiences of learning mindfulness through meditation, it's taught me to kind of slow down my thoughts long enough to realize like, oh, wait, I'm, beating myself up again, which happens, or, worried too much about the future and things. So I think that's been something that's been, really beneficial, and it just trying to approach life. I haven't figured it all out yet, by a long shot. But with the assistance of medication and therapy, in my experiences, certainly that's been a big part of that too.
Yeah. I think that microdosing has been one of the ways that I've been able to shift my self-talk, my negative self-talk. That's been helpful for me. Yeah.
And but you had, like, early on, as you said, like, your entrepreneurial journey started before you were diagnosed, right? And so you had gumption, you had, the wherewithal to do stuff and be successful with that. Do you know what might have driven you that way, or is it hard? Were there people in your life that inspired you, or other entrepreneurs that you knew, or did you join like a women's business or a business incubator or accelerator or something, or no?
No, I mean,
you just were like, screw it, I just want to do it.
Well, I mean, if I launched my first company in terms of a product company when I was 32, that's 17 years ago. I don't know. I mean, how much were we talking about entrepreneurship 17 years ago? right?
Well, it may not have had the word, right? Because the word is like, yeah, it's all over the place now. But people were starting businesses, right? And so thus
Yeah,
they
but,
would be.
but universities did not have
Oh,
entrepreneurship programs, right?
no, that's true.
Now it's not a dirty word. Guess what else isn't a dirty word? Being creative. So
Yeah,
here I am, a creative entrepreneur before there was words for it
yeah,
and before there was respect for either path. It's just who I've always been.
yeah,
And not thinking things through is why I start them, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
we'll figure it out, but this feels like what the path is. And, I'm not going to start something that I don't think has the potential
of
to be,
course. Yeah,
to be great.
yeah,
But I mean, I've started 9 businesses and sold 3. Now, they're not all winners, and they're not all something that I want to stick with,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe I didn't have anything to lose,
yeah,
right? If you're
yeah,
trying to get to a certain place, if you're not willing to take risks, you're not going to get there.
yeah.
And, I said, I've had angels throughout my life, right? So
That
there's,
definitely helps.
there's been some lucky breaks for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
And
It sounds amazing.
I have awesome parents. I do. I was raised with a lot of love and support.
Yeah.
So
Well, that definitely helps too. April, this has been awesome. How can people learn more about you and yeah, reach out and contact?
I would love for people to subscribe to my Substack. Yeah, there's a free subscription right now. For the last 10 weeks, I've been exploring microdosing for midlife,
Mm-hmm.
for men and women. And yeah, if you subscribe to my Substack, it's aprilpride.substack.com. Then you'll learn about the psychedelic salon I host in Seattle that's about to go on tour, the podcast that I host, products, all of it. Yeah, that's the best place to really track my work.
That's awesome. And I'll include that all in the show notes. April, this has been awesome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate what you're doing for our community of people. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for watching the podcast. Please join us at ysquirrels.com. I'll see you there.